We turn now to Iran, where the domestic crackdown is only intensifying. Rights groups say executions are rising, political prisoners are facing harsher treatment, and dissent is being met with an even heavier hand. One of those prisoners is the acclaimed Iranian poet Mahvash Sabet, who has spent years behind bars because of her Baha'i faith. Her powerful new memoir, Open Wide the Doors, recounts the first months of her imprisonment. And joining me now is its editor and co-translator, Bahiyyih Nakhjavani. Bahiyyih, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a very powerful book, and I want to get to your participation here and how you became involved. But let's just talk about how it was written, because Mahvash wrote the book inside Mashhad and Evin prisons. Just take us into how you got a hold of this book. How was this transcript even able to leave the prison?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bianna, for having me here. It's a real honor to be able to speak about Mahvash and on behalf of all those who, like her, have no voice coming out of Iran at this time, this difficult time. First of all, I'd like to just distinguish between the book that you're referring to, which is her memoir, and the actual bulk of the memoir, which came to some 750 pages by the time my co-translator Azita and I had managed to transcribe it and translate it into English. So there is a distinction between what we have published, which is just the very beginning of a 10-year story, and what she actually managed slowly, meticulously, with great pain and difficulty, to scribble on tiny bits of paper, on tissues. She would split tissue papers. You know, I did one to show you how extraordinary it is. Little scraps of newspaper that she was able to find, anything, margins of books, and slowly, slowly over the course of the years, get these little scraps of her memoirs smuggled out of the prison. Now, of course, they didn't reach us immediately. Mahvash was first arrested in 2008. And she wasn't actually able to start writing until 2012. And the last 7 years of her 10-year prison sentence was when she was doing these little scribbles, plus her poetry, and managing slowly, slowly to get them out. I did not see them until 2018, when Mahvash was released from prison in 2017. She came and visited us the year afterwards and asked me to write a book based on her memoirs. And that's when Azita and I began this incredible job. It was a mountain, Bianna, of notes. It was really a huge, huge task. And we had to think of what to do. How can you publish 750 pages? It's impossible. So we had to make a few decisions about where to focus. And that's how we looked at that very early part of the story, when she was first in Mashhad, all in solitary confinement, and then in Evin in solitary confinement. And it was just those first 10 months, 10 months of her 10-year sentence, which is the substance of this book.
And you just described a Herculean effort there to get this first part of the book published, so that readers, everyone around the world, can get a sense not only of her bravery, but what she endured, and almost exclusively because of her Baha'i faith. And let's give a little bit more of a timeline in her life and put it up against the regimes, because they coincide in many ways. In 1979, she was fired as a school teacher because of her faith. In 2008, she was arrested as a Baha'i leader, 10 years in prison, as you noted. In 2022, rearrested at the age of 69, broken kneecaps, another decade after a 1-hour trial. Today, she is 73 years old, recovering from open heart surgery. She is essentially in medical furlough under a travel ban right now. What does her life tell us, and her commitment to her faith, about the strength that she carries with her? And from what we've seen thus far and what's been published, there is nothing that stands out other than compassion.
Yes, that really is one of the hallmarks, Bianna, of this book. it's a prison memoir, and usually prison memoirs are about the individual who is suffering. Mahvash absolutely reverses all the cliches. I mean, for a start, she just flips all the misery and turns it into a magnanimity towards others. She really has turned the despair that one normally feels in these circumstances into a kind of hope. And as you say, that compassion that comes out from her towards others, so that it becomes a memoir, not just of herself. It becomes a memoir about others, about the women that she meets in the prison, even about the guards. Even she has compassion towards a sort of comic compassion towards the interrogators. She ends up saying she just can't hate anyone. She has this remarkable capacity for switching misery into hope. And that's one of the hallmarks of the book. The other thing which I might mention is that in her style, there is a quality of humor. You know, when I met her, I was really shocked. For the first time I met her in 2018 when she came out of prison. I was expecting, you know, when you hear someone suffered in prison, you're thinking of them being in a state of disarray and misery. Not at all. She was full of humor. She was full of joy. She had light in her eyes and full of happiness. And I just couldn't believe it. You know, she was breaking all the cliches. And that quality of hers, which really boils down to one of the hallmarks also of her faith, which is constructive resilience, which is not giving in to a sense of being the victim. She absolutely refused to be a victim all through this period. And that is very distinctive. And this quality that she has, as you put it, of going out of herself was one of the reasons why I'm so happy to be able to speak about her work, because she is truly one of many in Iran who are suffering, as you know, particularly, of course, the Baha'is, but also beyond the Baha'i community, as you pointed out in your introduction. But the Baha'is, of course, have had an extremely difficult time, not just since the revolution, but since the beginning of the emergence of the Baha'i faith. It's a homegrown faith. It comes from Iran. It was born in Iran in the middle of the 19th century. So for 178 years, the Baha'is have been persecuted as heretics, accused of apostasy. Now it's thinly veiled in the guise of espionage, in, you know, being agents of foreign governments, all kinds of egregious lies. But deep down, it's a profound religious animosity towards the Baha'is because of their fundamental beliefs in the oneness of God, the oneness of religion, and the oneness of humankind. And these ideals seem to be a great problem for the current regime. But of course, that's what sustained Mahvash herself. Yes.
Especially women who uphold those ideals. UN experts found more than 3/4 of the Baha'is summoned to court or prison were women like Mahvash. I'm wondering if you can read us a passage from this book that you translated.
Surely. It's in a place where she has come to the point where she's looking into herself, and she asks herself, you know, what has happened to her in this condition of solitary confinement. And she realizes that the spiritual power to overcome the fears and defeats that surround us, all these marvels I unearthed in the silence of the solitary cell. And then, to my utter disbelief, I found that I was not only growing accustomed to solitary confinement, but beginning to appreciate the value of it. In fact, I was learning the meaning of free will in that grey cell. Solitary confinement had been forced on me, yes, but it was up to me how I chose to live with it. It was my decision whether to accept it consciously or to merely endure it in turmoil, resentment, and growing terror. The choice was entirely mine. I was free to do as I willed.
That is incredibly powerful. And as you noted at the beginning of our conversation, just a piece of the work that she has written for years, and that you thankfully continue to translate as well. You yourself are an Iranian writer. You have spent the majority of your life outside of the country. I don't want to assume that you can speak for Mahvash, but I'm wondering if she were to speak to the Iranian people right now, what would you guess she would tell them?
Well, I have a feeling that her book is what she would tell them. She really has offered this book like a gift to everybody, of course, but it's a legacy she's reminding the Iranian people that they have in their own hands. This legacy of seeing hope in despair, of seeing freedom even in prison, of not being victims, but being able to construct in this incredible way with a resilience that will endure through difficulties and emerge. That's the gift she wants to give to the Iranian people, I believe. That's the message of her book.
Strength and compassion, and we are so grateful to you, Bahiyyih Nakhjavani, for translating it and bringing this to us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bianna. It's a huge privilege.
The privilege is ours.